If you use any of the hard chemicals, you are going to become pesticide applicators, unlicensed. But you got to follow the directions. In this case, if some is good, a lot is not necessarily better. A lot could kill your hive. And after what you've done, sat through us for 6 or 8 weeks and bought woodenware and put it together and then paid, I don't know how much for a package or later on a nuke. I don't want you to lose it because you got excited and drove a little bit too much of this, that, or the other thing into the hive. So at times tonight I may be reading things. And this first one is what Tony always would start off with. It is important for pesticide applicators to read the entire pesticide label prior to use. Following the label instructions is crucial in order to ensure safety to the applicator, the bees, and honey destined for human consumption. Proper pesticide usage will also slow the development of Varroa resistance to the active ingredient, thereby extending long-term efficacy to the compound being used. Finally, remember that just because a pesticide is considered organic does not mean it is not toxic to the bees or applicator. And here are 3 words you may see on some of these labels. Caution means slightly toxic, over 1 ounce needed to kill the average person. So that would be what they call the LD, the lethal dose of 1 ounce. Warning, moderately toxic, 1 teaspoon to 1 ounce needed to kill the average person. Danger, highly toxic, a few drops to 1 teaspoon needed to kill the average person. So his comment, and I'm reading his words, are pick your poison prudently. I've got some potpourri up here tonight too, and one of the things is when I give honey away, I put one of these labels on every jar, and I want everyone here to take one and stick it on your book. It's very simple. Granulation, all natural honey will turn solid to reliquefied. Place jar in warm water. The next one's in red. Warning, do not feed honey to infants under 1 year because of the possibility of botulism. There is a honey called Mantua that has been recognized for using for burns. I had a hole in my leg and I was in Penn Bay for 3 days. And the lady doctor came in and said, I don't know what's going on. So I had someone sneak me in a 4x4 and some honey, and I drove it on it. When she found it on there the next morning, she said, what is this? And I said, well, you weren't getting anywhere, so I'm trying a home remedy. She'd never heard of honey. I'm fascinated by the weird and unusual, and to me that is just wonderful. When young doctors today don't know about something like that, it's an acid produced by the honey that is what kills the pustules, whatever. Pustules, thank you. To further understand the critter, it's this one right here. If you don't understand another thing I say tonight, I want you to understand what's on the right-hand side of this trifold. The egg laid by the queen. Okay, egg. We have had adult human beings stand up here and say they can't find the egg. And that's because they've been told it's a grain of rice or what have you. I wish everybody could see this. So I got a bigger version, okay? Some smart person cut down through a comb. Number one, this shows a 7-degree tip of the comb that keeps the liquid in from falling out. And when you extract in an extractor, you've got to put that comb in the right way, or you'll fight against yourself and drive it deeper into the cell. You've got to know which way to turn it. But here's a representation of an egg. The wax got too warm from the picture taking and the egg fell over down here. So I took a piece of paper and made a new egg and put it in where it was supposed to be. Only the queen with her long abdomen can get down to the bottom of that cell and put that egg right there. And so you're staring up at not only not a tiny grain of rice, you're staring up at the end of a tiny grain of rice. And if you look down in and you find little tiny grains of rice attached to the sidewalls, that means you've got a laying worker. Her abdomen is not long enough to get down to the critical point of attachment. So there's another tip-off that you've got a queen problem. Your hive is not queen right. Everyone understand that word? That buffaloed me for 2 years before I finally sat down with the vocabulary and queen right and queenless. And so what you're looking for are eggs. Have I passed these around before? I have. Okay. Do it again. Okay. We will pass them around again. The 3 stages in the picture are egg, larva, and pupa. Why did I give that to you? You could probably teach this. Back to this little trifold. Egg laid by the queen. So now we've got an egg. It's a little crooked in the picture. And then look what's going on 8 days after laying. Our fertilized female Varroa has been roaming around for between 1 and 8 days. And that's one of those periods where you can hit them with powdered sugar and get them to fall off and fall down through the screen bottom board. And I believe it's within 15 hours, it's less than a day's time, she'll sneak in there. So the larva's got to be giving off a smell to tell the mite that it's almost time to be capped. So she goes in there and she's doing her thing, laying the male first. He's fertilizing the sisters, 1 egg every 30 hours. That's fascinating. But go down to the bottom right-hand corner. The young bee leaves the cell carrying 2 fertilized female mites, any of the immature ones that were laid last, and the male remain within the cell. So she goes in with none and comes out with 1 or 2. So it's a critical time in the life cycle of that Varroa mite that you can hit them with some of the soft chemicals. The harder chemicals not only get the phoretic or hitchhiking mites, they get the ones, the acids can go right through, vaporize through that cell capping. And that's a neat thing to have happen. It's almost like you've got hygienic fumes going through the cell. Is everybody understand that life cycle? And the longer they're in a cell, which means in the drone comb, the longer the more mites they're going to raise and come out of the cell with. So I was reading something today. If you had a very good kill of all the mites with cap brood in the deeps, no phoretic, no hitchhiking mites at all. All the rolls, the powdered sugar and the alcohol rolls all came out 0 or 1. Within days of the new bees emerging, they bring new Varroa that had been in the cell with them. So they're saying within 8 days you can have your hive right back up to full mite count again. So that's what you're working against. 1 weekend you're fine, and 2 weekends later you could be crashing. It's just, they're not pretty. Okay, and once they've drawn this one out, I ended up with a second one. This is what I learned 11 years ago. And they start drawing this out. And once they had all of this drawn out, you put a honey super on. Now, for some of us, we're about to go out and maraud around our hives, and hopefully the brood will be up here in this upper box. And what we do is we reverse the boxes. This one, you'll put it off. This one's empty. Well, for the most part, empty. And you take the one that has the bees in it and put that down below, because they're going to start working up. However, who's buying nukes? Now you have a chance to get rid of this your nuke. I'd almost dare to say I'd help you pay for it. If your nuke, a 5-frame nuke, doesn't come with one that looks like this, I'll be really surprised. This is how the nuke producers get rid of their crap. Old frames. And it makes a wonderful campfire starter. You should see how everything, beeswax is just amazing. And that's the safest thing to do with it. Don't try and save it. Burn it. Enjoy the heat from the beeswax flames. And that's why I say, if you can put the date on all your frames when you started them, you will know, other than the 5 that are absolutely atrocious, in years to come, which should come out next after you get rid of this initial. And if I could, I would get rid of the initial 4 or 5 the first year. There's icky, sticky, bad stuff in that wax. Some of it can linger as long as 10 years, and that goes back to stuff that is no longer used because it has been deemed harmful to bees and beekeepers. Okay. There are acids that you can put in a hive. There are 3 natural acids. There's formic, lactic, and oxalic acid. And I wish I could have gotten Bill Truesdale down from Bath, because Bill is quite a proponent of the oxalic acid. Oxalic acid is used to bleach wood. And it is mixed up and used as what they call a drench, to squirt in between these frames in a hive. Now, when you get into reading everything, you will start to pick up that sometimes for a certain chemical or an application, it says okay to use with honey or bees on, and not okay to use. Or okay to use in the fall, or okay to use in the spring before the onslaught of all the flowers, and therefore the bees, the nectar and the pollen. And I would like somebody in this room to be able to tell me when the onslaught of bees and pollen is coming, because for the last 11 years, I don't think 2 years has been the same. And you may have a chemical on that after 42 days on, you're supposed to give it a 12-day breather. Now, work that into your calendar and figure out what you're doing. That makes some of these chemicals a real mess, and really not handy. Formic acid, several years ago, and by the way, they're calling it the silver bullet, the thing that will cure everybody's problems. They thought they had formic acid pads. This is where I'm supposed to put the gloves on. But I've been keeping this out in the barn for 4 or 5 years, and I can pass this around, and it's just formic acid on a piece of ceiling tile. But it wasn't that way when I first got them. They were in that box, and when you took the lid off that box, it would curl your toes and rot your socks. It was strong. And what you were doing is you were putting it on some sticks to give it breathing room, and you would put it over where the brood nest was. So in my, there's Yeah, where I have my bees, they seem to congregate over here on the warm side, so I would be putting that there. And then a medicine rim. Have anybody bought medicine rims? If like there's 8 of you in Rockland, if one of you goes and buys a deep, you can run it through a table saw and get 7 medicine rims off it. It's like a da. And then you put this on, and that's providing vapor space. So that's where a medicine rim would come in. Again, formic acid is something that is already in honey, so you're using something that is really not that bad. It's how much you use. It's temperature critical and time critical. And those things, I'm retired now, so if I have to do something in 12 days, I can do it if it's not pouring rain. When I was working, I couldn't. It was like every Saturday or every other Saturday. And sometimes I'd lose track, and sometimes other stuff would get in the way. I'm staring at him right in the face, so I'll mention it. You will read about small cell foundation. Well, I read about small cell comb. And of course, being new and wanting to try every single thing, I had to get it. A case of it was $135 or $40. It comes from California. This is 4.9 millimeters. And they measure that by taking the distance of 10 cells in a frame and adding it up, dividing by 10, and that's how you will come out. And they claim some of the natural comb drawn by bees in the center of the brood nest will get as small as 4.8. So this 4.9, apparently what their thought is, it's so tight in there, the little devil doesn't have much room to move around. At one time, the explanation was she couldn't fit down in there in a small cell comb, or it was harder for her to fit down in. When I first showed Tony this, he laughed like the devil. It was almost hilarious. He said, "Let me know how that damn thing works." Well, what they did, it's very hard to see. They drew brood right here and almost a straight line up both sides. They left open. They never got the honey or the pollen into it. It was very odd to pick up this small cell, but I had to try it to see if there was, and my problem is I'm trying so many different things, I never find out what works. It's a Heinz situation with me. I keep doing everything. And then when I got into the powdered sugar, that just blew everything out of the way with the little ghosties. So you have screen bottom board, mite traps for the drone cells, small cell foundation or comb to keep the mites in check. I have to keep going over that. The formic acid pad has now morphed to quick strips. Mite away quick strips. And what's fascinating to me is they sell them in the same container. He must have gotten 1 million of these. And it just doesn't say Mite Away 2 anymore. It says Macus, M-A-Q-U-S. And now, I tried this last year, and being a male and not reading directions, and not reading sign language, I want to show you where to put them. Because they have pictures of what people thought the illustration said. So there we have it. Now, Lorraine, here's the package it comes in. What does it show down the center of the package?
Scissors for cutting.
Didn't have scissors. So, stupid here thought he could take his Hive tool and cut it open. I ended up with this god-awful mess on my hands, shredded the meat pads. Now this is acid I'm dealing with, right? And it's on meat pads. And one would go here. No, this is dihydrogen oxide. I wouldn't dare use it, okay? And the other one would go here. And you will see the bees, when you're doing this, you will see the bees roll right away from this. And you may read that this should go between two instead of on top. There has been that Randy Oliver has been very good about, okay, I'm not going to put 50 grams of this stuff up on top. I'm going to take 25 grams and put it in the middle and do it twice. That's the type of guy he is. That prevents driving the bees out, because one of the calls all of us get is just within minutes after treatment, all the bees decide to evacuate on the front of the hive, and they're out there kind of talking it over and saying, what just happened in there? You know, everything was hunky-dory dandy, and they were fat, chubby, and happy, and then all of a sudden this gaseous smell. However, I read that the stronger the hive, the less they are bothered by it, which I think is wonderful. There is another one, menthol. I'm surprised no one smelled these crystals. Now, this is real nasty stuff, right? Vicks Vapor Rub, mouthwash. This has, what is this, got 4 of them in it. Eucalyptol, menthol, menthol solicitate, and thymol. You know, handy dandy good stuff. And you put that in your mouth. So it can't be that bad. All I can think of is this. Whenever I got sick when I was a kid, Grammy would be in there with a piece of flannel and the thing around my neck. All I can think of is my grandmother in the hive trying to put little pieces of flannel underneath 30,000 bees. That's all I can picture. It just, love you, Grammy. Naturally occurring materials, and you're just introducing into the hive in a different manner. So these Apigard, and that's one of the things, these have expired. There's a 2-year shelf life on these. Expired 9 of 09. And what you do is, now, if you use this is from experience. You don't just get on this and hog it off. Probably not going to come off tonight. Okay, so you get on that and you pull it open. And then I think for sure it will say put over top of where the brood is. And leave this on. This one was propolized. You can see how the girls really didn't like it. So they started to finish it off, which I think is a riot. But if anybody wants... Right up here. Yeah. And it may instruct you to do, again, the medication rim to give it more room to activate. Some of these are very temperature dependent. If it goes below 60 degrees, nothing will happen. If it goes above 92, it'll say get in there and get it off, and be sure and follow those temperature.
Liquefying when it gets hot?
Yeah, but the smell gets overwhelming for them. I won't pass it around. I'll leave it up here for everybody to come. And when I bought those, they were $3.50 a piece. I don't know what they are now, and I got them from Swans. And I really like this versus the acid smell. The acid smell kind of upset me. The newest thing, Mite Away Quick Strips, Mite Away 2, is these are no longer available. So you have formic acid, oxalic acid, Mite Away Quick Strips, which are those things in the meat pads, essential oils and thymols. That's where we were with the Apigard. And now we can jump into the ApiLife VAR, which is something that apparently only Brushy Mountain carries. And you're saying right now, why is he talking about so many different ones? Well, the second thing Tony would tell you is never treat 2 years running with the same stuff. You can do the powdered sugar all the time, but if you get into this other stuff, change over seasonally, or if something isn't working right away, change over right away and go to a different one. And change methods of application, watch your timing, days on. There are so many variables. I don't know why you aren't getting up right now and all walking out saying, this is nuts. but to me, it's kind of a challenge. Pardon me?
We have a mentor list, that's why we're not leaving.
The mentor list. I just found something else, and I haven't shown it to you, and rather than forget it, bug jail, the small hive beetle. Have you read about that in any? Okay, there's a jail trap. You fill it with oil and you put it between two frames. And for some unknown reason, they go in there. But when they get here, big time. That's another thing. I'll digress again, or still. When you go get your nuke, when you get a package, you get what you get. And I think I mentioned this on an email. If you see more than 2 layers of dead bees in your package, just go to whoever you're buying it from and just say bluntly, I'd like a live package, please. You're paying enough for it. And if they're all 2 layers dead, that's hard. If there's an inch dead, don't write a check. Well, if you've already written a check, you can't non-write it. But I went up to get my first nuke at a reputable dealer once, and I didn't see what was going on. He went across the street and was fiddling around putting frames in a nuke box. I went home and I bought and brought home chalk brood, and I was a little bit wild. That's a hurt on the colony. The colony has to deal with that, getting rid of it and getting better. And so I suggest, if you can, you watch what's going in your nuke. And what's even better is if you go to a dealer that will install your nuke in your deep, you can watch what's going on. And just talk to who's ever doing the installing about, gee, what's on that frame? And is there any chalk brood on there? And that will tell them that you're above the average turkey and you know that you're looking for something. And I would entitle those comments, don't buy trouble. You're going to have enough puzzlement as it is with what goes on. Okay. I got to stop yapping. And now, we have the new silver bullet from last year. Hop Guard. This I had scissors for. I was very mindful of the disaster I had last time. It's a bag of 50 strips. They're U-shaped, and they're dripping with hop. See that kaka-poo-poo? That was the smell Jamie referred to as being up here. Apparently, if you drink beer, you're drinking that. So, for any beer drinkers, no, don't lick the bottom of it, because what they want you to do, the efficacy of this, is to put these strips in dripping wet. And then when you read the information, it'll say it only works while they're dripping wet, which means if they go on in some heat, and I love the English language. Some people will say, well, you'll read between the frames, and what they mean is straddle the frames, because if you go look at the video, they're straddling the frames. And if the brood nest was here, then you do diagonal corners on either corner of the brood nest. Read closely what it says to do after 3 or 4 days, and you go back and check, and they're dry or they're chewing them up and spitting them out. They will. You don't have to take these cardboard strips off. I took them off for show and tell, but you can see here on the edge where they've started to chew on it. And on one of the handouts, you can see they've chewed up the majority of it where it saddles over the top of the top bar. But what's good about this is apparently you can use this anytime. They limit you to 3 times a year, and you can have the honey on. And whenever I read things like that, I take special note of that because of my inability to predict honey flow, both start and stop. And if I'm having trouble predicting that, maybe Carrie Lupinen, whose husband is one of the people who runs Moose Crossing, Maybe she has divine intervention or divine thought about when flowers bloom and nectar flows, but I don't, and it just upsets me. Okay, hurry up.
How long is that hot guard good for when you buy it in the package? It's 50, right?
2 years. Yeah, they're 50 strips, so this is when 2 or 3 of you that are close together want to get together. And depending on whether you have 1 hive or 2 and how many boxes, you will be able to use that. But the instructions were put it in a plastic, and my problem was when I put it in the plastic tub, the rubber band broke and the goop oozed out. So at some point, I am going to have to transfer the goop back into the bag of strips to make them good again. But again, the ability to use those 3 times a year at any time, honey on or off, that to me is possibly the greatest improvement in any kind of medication that we have. And being natural, that's even better.
You said not to use things subsequent years. You do 1 year and then off
Correct.
the next. Is it the same with the hop guard, or is it only with the?
I don't know.
chemical?
I lost my late swarm that I got last August. I lost that. And I'm betting it's the Varroa knocked down the number of bees. What I saw this winter scared me. I saw on a relatively warm day, I saw bees that had flown down into the snow, and you could see struggle trails about 2 inches long. And there they were at the end of the struggle trail. And then I started to read about UV blindness on bees. When they go out in the sun like that, they don't know whether to fly up or down. And if they make the wrong decision, they're in the snow and they've pooched. So I don't know whether that's something else I have to worry about that's coming on.
You've never seen that before?
No. I had never seen the struggle trails before. I'd seen solitary bees, but maybe it was because I had never gotten out there soon enough to see those little trails. And with bee school coming up, I've got to watch what I do and say, because it'd be bad if the bee guy lost his bees. That's unacceptable. Wax moths. If you have a dead out, and that's what they call them, dead out, you should close up all the holes. And one of the reasons for that is the wax moths will come in and the larva will lay. And within 2 weeks, your hive can look like that. And this is why I use wax foundation. Because if the wax moth gets in there, you just take this over to the scrap pail and take your hive scraper and scrape it all off, and you're good to go. Now, this other one is chalk brood. This is not a good picture of chalk brood. There are a few mummies. When the larva dies, it turns black and white, and the white is the chalk of the chalk brood. And they sometimes can rattle around inside of these cells. The 3 frames of the 5 I had, they were nested down here on the bottom. And they overcame it all by themselves. I didn't do anything, but they had to spend hive time and resources to overcome that. I don't know whether...
Can you treat chocolate?
On the plastic foundation, what is the chance of disease getting into the plastic?
Okay, the question is, on plastic foundation, what's the chance of a disease getting in? Yes, on this next one I'm going to talk about, there is a chance of it, and I'll tell you what happened to one of our members. This is not a disease. This is larvae that get in there, and they pupate. And the pupae are running around spinning cocoons, and that's what this mess is. So this is okay to scrape off and start again. Chalk brood is okay. Now, wait a minute. Chalk brood is a virus, isn't it? Yeah. So that could be a little bit spotty. One thing, when I was talking about making sugar over in the corner the other day, this bottle got away from me, and I meant to talk about it. It's Honeybee Healthy. It's expensive. That's a $23 or $4 bottle. But you only use 3 or 4 drops of it in every container of water that you put on your hive. and it has feeding stimulant with essential oils. And when you start looking at what essential oils are, there's spearmint oil, lemongrass oil. How do you pronounce it? Lecithin? That one. Sodium lauryl sulfate. That's what's in there. They sound relatively harmless, but I'm not going to drink it because it's too expensive. But and it smells wonderful. I use this as a room deodorizer. It smells so good. Okay, wax moth and chalk brood. The nasty, nasty caca, and this is what Tony was always famous for. He'd have stuff over there on paper, and there'd be a toothpick in it, and you knew that was the American foul brood. And the reason he had the toothpick in it is the way you test for it is you dive into the cell and you pick up some of the contents of the cell and pull it out. And it's a brown, gooey, sticky, icky liquid. And that's called, that sticking to the toothpick is called roping. Jamie had the unfortunate happenstance last year to have this happen to her hives. And David came down and he put the pyrethrin to them, closed them up, and then hauled them off and burned them. Tony keeps telling us about the USDA have test hives with these spores in it, and for 49 or 50 years, every year they take out some of the material of the hive and the spores are still active after 50 years. So one of the bad things that you may have inherited is Grampy's bee boxes and frames. They should go somewhere where they're not seen again. Really. Tony will look at them for you. And if it's iffy, if they're worth saving, he will say, get 2 or 3 cans of Pesticide and get ready to start scorching the insides of those, kill them by heat. But for the price you pay for a new box and frames, to know that there's no way you can have a problem, to me that's the better of those 2 ways to go. It's characterized by cells that have a small hole through the middle of the cap. When I went down to Jamie's, I had a cold and I couldn't smell to save my soul. But David said, you smell it, and I couldn't. But apparently there is an odor of death to it. And there were a lot of these cell cappings that had the pinhole in it. And I tried to rope some out, but I couldn't. But he found some that would rope out. And that's a case. Yeah, they're all viral. And American foul brood and European foul brood. You will read about treating them with Thailand, some of the chemicals that you'll find up at Union Farm Equipment in the yellow bag. If you get into that situation, watch those instructions implicitly. I think that's on your. Thailand for foul brood. 3 treatments, 7 days apart. Sprinkle recommended dosage around edges of the brood box on top of the bars and frames once a week for 3 weeks. Treat spring and fall. That's an intensive treatment. You know, I don't know how you can guess whether you're going to get 3 nice weekends to get out there and do it.
The club has terramycin for folks that think they're at risk for foul brood. Since Thomaston was sort of a pocket of foul brood last year, I would suggest you talk with Jamie and me like sometime tonight. We'll look it up, we'll think you need the dust. It's pretty easy, it really is, and that's more of a preventative as prophylactic. Years ago when I started beekeeping, automatic, every spring and every fall we used it. Well, we don't have so much foul brood as we used to back then in the 80s. We didn't have mice in the 80s, we had foul brood instead.
Peter, excuse me.
Yes.
Peter, if this is such a virulent thing, foul brood, and you're saying you have to burn your hives, why would you try to treat it?
If you can catch it ahead of time, like what Jean is just saying, the recipe, it's a preventive measure. Now, and let me follow up with, and I've told you this story, but it bears repeating. Dave immediately wanted to know where Mr. Barnett lived because he'd sold him either a package or a nuke last year. And he lived at less than probably 1,000 feet away, airline. And Dave was really nervous about robbing going on from this hive. So that's the reason you want to get registered, so that if there's something bad, no good going on, and you don't know about it, that they can call you and say, hey, so-and-so over on 2 streets away from you has got a bad problem with American foul brood. And that will spur you to get out and look for these cells that, oh, wrong frame. Cells that have the little pinhole right in the middle. Once you know what you're looking for, and apparently the smell, as it develops and gets worse, the smell is really awesome. Stinky poo.
So we treat for that, Peter?
You can treat for that, but I have never done it, and I don't recommend it.
Routinely do it.
Pardon me?
You don't routinely treat ahead of time prophylactically anymore.
Okay.
In a high-risk area, you might want to consider.
And that brings me back to the last little critter, the Varroa mite, which we've discussed ad nauseum. But if you can understand the Varroa mite and when you can treat for it, in the reading I've done, I probably put down over 200 pages of reading, and the consensus is the powdered sugar was at one time poo-pooed, but if it's done more often than people are planning on doing it, you will have quite a bit of success with just powdered sugar. And it's a neutral material that you're using on the bees. But again, that right-hand side of the trifold, you've got to try and get in the middle of it. There was a wonderful article, go cage the queen behind queen excluders for 2 weeks on the drone frame. Cage her on that for 2 weeks and she'll just fill that up with drones. In the meantime, all the larvae that are hatching will come out, and all the Varroa on the bees that come out of the hatched will now be hitchhiking, and that's when you can hit them all with any of these chemicals or the powdered sugar. Yes,
Could you review how you apply the powdered sugar?
yes. Oh, I wish I was over in the corner. I had a medication rim and I put a house screen on it. And I very carefully would measure out 2 cups of powdered sugar and put it on. And then I would take my bee brush and go the long way and the cross way, and 2 cups. And that's for each deep. Toward the end, you were on the top deep. You just took like a handful and threw it on there and just messed it in like that. You could be in and out of there in 15 seconds. It was wonderful. And then the biggest kick I got was looking out on the front landing board when all the ghosties came out. That gave me a good indication that I got good coverage on the treatment.
Does that affect their flying?
No,
They just,
no, and they eat it off each other. The real smart scientists have found that there is a slight kill on the open brood. So that would be in the egg, right? But because it's a natural, it's a sugar. It's not, other than suffocating, it's not harmful. And if you have a queen that's up to 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day, you could probably lose 5% every time you dust it and not really have an effect on the hive.
could you use a flour sifter, an old-fashioned flour sifter?
Well, you weren't here for that, were you?
No.
Oh yeah, I've
No,
even
I wasn't.
I've even graduated the one that I got from a cooking company. It holds like 5 pounds, and you can grind away. But I just,
Yeah, by the time I got there, you were just dusting.
anybody know what Bell's liquidation is in Route 17 in Chelsea? I found 45-pound boxes of 10x powdered sugar in there, bought them all. I have my living dining, the parlor is just so full of stuff, it's amazing. But it was like 45 pounds for $10, you know. Can't beat it. So I bought them all. But
How often is that recommended to do?
every week. And if you can get in this cycle of knowing when the Varroa are going to come out of the cells,
Yeah.
if you can figure that out and get in tune with that, so that when they're out roaming around, being phoretic, being hitchhiking, that's when you can do your greatest damage to them. Powdered sugar won't do hoot for them when they're sealed inside. That's when you got to get one of these chemicals. And I did this over in the corner too. I kept burying stuff.
Papers on the floor.
I'm looking for the one with the scissor there. This is the one. This is the Mite Away Quick Strip in the Hop Guard is probably what you'll see the most used. Yes?
Can you use the apple bar and then use Hop Guard?
You should check with, now remember when I did the mite wash over there? After you do your Apigard, after you do anything, you should do a control wash and see what you've got. And what would be wonderful if you could do two of them, the before that tips you off you've got to be doing something, and then after a treatment, the after, to see if you accomplish anything. Again, bees from the brood area, because those damn little Varroa are hanging on the nurse bees waiting to get the smell that within 15 hours they're going to cap a cell. So that's where they're all hanging around. Either that or over on the green frame. Any other questions? Please see me after class if I've confused you. Or
Because you're going to, you're getting your two packages. Once you've installed them, could you explain exactly what your plan is for both your feedings, the start and stop, and also your treatment plan, and what you would use for
Okay.
your treatments?
Well, if you all picked up the spring and summer management handout that I gave, that clearly spells out what to do with packages. But after I install them on Saturday, on Sunday afternoon, after I get home from church, I will be checking the feeder bucket. I want to see how fast they're going to take it, because bees can take up to 2 to 4 quarts a day of that. So I want to make sure that they're not going to get too hungry right away, and just make sure that they're maybe coming out now and doing some orientation flights just to see where they are, and they're going to be sitting there saying, oh, we're not in Georgia now, it's cold out here in Maine. But just that sort of thing, just to kind of watch them like that. And then now I will put the queen so that she is, going to be released eventually. But I'm not going to check to see if she's been released for at least 4 to 5 days, right? And that's when you take off the sugar syrup feeder and you take off the inner cover and you check your queen cage. And if she's been released, good. If she hasn't been released and they look like they're very happy with her, like they're all over the cage, kind of putting their tongues in, saying hi and feeding her and such like that, then you can open that little court right over the hive, as I said earlier, and let her go. Right? And then you put that extra frame back in that you've taken out. And then you just kind of go from there, just feeding, watching to see how they're drawing out the comb. Remember, I'm starting brand new, just like every one of you. I have no drawn foundation in any of my hives now. It's all brand new. So I'll be watching to see how they're filling out, kind of rearranging frames. And when I get to that 8 frames filled out number, that's what I'm going to put on the next box. Still going to feed. When they're up in that top box and they're filling out the frames and they're getting out to like the number 8 frame and stuff, this is when I'm going to really be watching them to see what they're doing. Hopefully by then they should stop taking the sugar syrup. And then it's just a matter of kind of monitoring them for how much comb have they got, are they filling it up with honey, what are they doing? Do I really need to put on a super maybe in July? It's not going to probably happen with packages, but sometimes it's a really good year and they do, you put on. But in the meantime, I'll also be monitoring for mites. I'll be checking my my screen bottom board, the debris board there, checking that, the monitor board for that. Doing some powdered sugar rolls. I like powdered sugar. I don't usually use alcohol, but I know how to do it. Just kind of watching their overall health. I do expect to have mites.
can I say? I do have hives nearby, and I do expect to have mites, and I'm gonna bring 2 nukes in and install them down in the lake, and that's probably about a little over 2 miles from my hive, so they could possibly intersect in a field, and I have seen mites go from one bee to another. So that's just kind of a basic overview of what I'm gonna
So
do.
prophylactically, you're not gonna do anything?
I do
other than
nothing
to watch?
prophylactically. Glad you brought that up. I talked to Tony about that, by the way, because we had that question here about,
Right.
everybody's got mites, let's just treat them. Well, you know, he pointed out to me the same thing that I knew. Years ago, we got a magic bullet called Apistan strips. Fluvalinate was the chemical name. And people, oh, it was a magic bullet, and it did work. They really did work. But people didn't follow directions. They left them in forever. They didn't take them out when they should have. And the mites did similar to what insects did with DDT. They became resistant to the Apistan, which is really too bad because it is a good product. So there's no prophylactic treating at all. You can't just treat because you think you have mites. You need to monitor to see if you have mites. Remember, the threshold is 7+ mites for about 300, 350 bees. You got 7 mites for that many bees that you put in a roll, you need to treat. You need to take off your honey supers and treat. My preference is I do not treat with my honey supers on. I really don't care what they say. That's just because I was taught not to, so. I don't want stuff like that in the honey that we're gonna eat. So it's my personal thing. But if they say it's safe with honey supers on, then I'm sure that it probably is. I hope that answers most of your question. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm picking up my nuke at Humboldt. How do I transport it? Do I wear my bee hat in the car? I mean, is it gonna be dangerous driving with these babies?
That's a good question.
Well, so the question is traveling with your nuke in the car. I'm sure Pete can answer as well as I can. I've done it before. The bees that escape, and there are always escapees,
Actually, I think that's a good question.
aren't really interested in you. It's not, package is even less than nukes, but I've never ever had a bee even try to sting me. And I'll give you the first year I did packages, I drove with a friend to Massachusetts to pick them up. And between us, we had, I think, 12 packages in the car. And I rode in the back seat with my arm over them to keep them from tipping over.
Okay.
And none of us got stung. Every time we stopped for gas, people looked at us like we were crazy. Because the bee, a dozen bees would come out and fly around and follow you, and everybody just starts scattering. But they really don't care. It's almost like a swarm. They're not interested in you. It's not a defensive situation. If you find them getting agitated, turn the AC on. That drops them right into a cluster. And they'll quiet right down, and they bunch up because they want to conserve their heat.
What arrangements did you make with Humboldt?
About coming to get them?
Yes.
They said come early in the morning, probably before dawn. I said, that won't happen. They said come late in the afternoon.
The reason for those instructions are, Paul or whoever is working with them, they will go out the evening before and cover up the entrance to the nuke.
Okay,
What I did with Paul is I took a deep with a bottom board screwed onto it, so it
Okay.
couldn't get loose,
okay,
and 5 empty frames. And we went out into this farmer's field where Paul had a lot of his nukes. They're out there, the girls are out there flying and doing their thing. And we went over to one nuke that had 2 rocks on it. He says, that's yours. And I didn't think about it at the time. And he smoked it a little, and we set my deep on the tailgate of the truck, and he brought the nuke over, and he opened my top, took the inner cover off, and then opened the top of the nuke, and just one by one picked it up and put the 5 frames in there. I had a window screening across the whole entrance on the bottom, and that was it. I drove home with it in the back of the pickup. If you have a car and you're just bringing the nuke home, that will be screened.
right.
That's why they wanted to know whether you were coming early in the morning, because they can't leave them in that nuke box all day long in the heat of day.
I see.
You gotta be able to move.
I see, okay.
So don't put them in the trunk.
Good point.
Yeah, your trunk is liable to be too hot and probably not enough, maybe not enough air, but it's, keep them in the car with you if you have a car. It's as scary as it sounds.
The professionals have one like this, with screening on it. And they screw that onto the top of the open hive. And that gives plenty of ventilation if they're moving them in the heated times.
Okay.
I was wondering if I should put an auger hole in my new box or not.
Do you mean you want to put an auger hole in the nuke box for transporting the car?
No,
Oh,
this
good.
is a whole new question.
Oh, all right, thank you.
Not a thread.
Since in most cases, they're not gonna be in the nuke very long, you're gonna transfer them within a week, probably, assuming we don't have a month of rain like we did 2 years ago. And so there wouldn't be much point in bothering with it, because you're gonna take them right out. And whether or not you put an auger hole in your hive boxes, that's a little more open to opinion. I think everybody's different. Some people swear by them, some people just hate putting holes in their boxes.
Okay, thanks.
If anyone has to requeen, I dragged this along just to show you. I requeened once, and I got a call about 6:15 in the morning from the post office. They said, "Your bees are here, come get them." Very terse message. So I went up, and in one of those plastic totes with flagging all the way around it, there was that message on one side,
What does it say?
this message on the other side. I mean, they were serious, the United States Postal Service. This was sitting in the middle, propped up so it couldn't tip over, and inside there was my plastic queen cage. And if you know, it's insured. I wrote in an email that we seem to always be in zone 5 up here.
Yeah.
And they self-insure through zone 4. But when you come up here in the willywags, spend the money for insurance, because if it's dead, I opened it right there to see if what she was and how many attendants she had with her. Everything was fine, but I read there are certain federal U.S. Post Office regulations that have to be, form yada this long, that have to be filled out, and you want to get a witness from somebody in the post office before you leave that queen was bottom up in the cage or something like that, whatever. So if that should happen to you. But for those of you who get into some serious beekeeping, VHS, Varroa Hygienics, sensitive? VHS,
Suppressive.
suppressive.
Or the SH.
Or the Russian queens, or the Minnesota Hygienics, Marla Spivak. After 10 years, there'll be certain names in the literature that will just jump right out at you. And the more names you see listed after a story, the better the story will be, I guarantee you. This Dennis Van,
Angles something.
it's a Dutch name.
Engelstoff.
Whenever I see his name as a byline on a story in the index, I go right to it,
Right.
because he has some really good information. But don't be afraid to order bees, the post office takes very good care of them. And if you're ordering bees, I'll go back to this picture. If you're not sure of finding the queen, do you see the oval of attendants around her? That's the first tip off, if she doesn't run. And Jean, I hope one runs on Jean, so you can watch Jean flip the frame over as she goes from one side to the other. It's quite exciting.
What won't happen this time?
And they also clip the wings, which prevents her from swarming,
Oh, I see.
which is something I didn't talk about. That's another management technique, to make sure the girls have plenty of room. And this past year, with that rain Adam was talking about, that precipitated a whole bunch of swarms. Because they were bored to death, they had no food, and they said, let's get out of here.
Okay, question in the back, Ray?
I have a placing concern for my hives. I have a south to southeast, southwest exposure facing with a windbreak on the back, but the facing is in a high traffic area. Like it's only about 4 or 5 feet from a raised garden bed that isn't gonna move. So what I was wondering is facing the sun, does the opening have to face the sun, or does the hive just have to catch sun to give it the warmth?
Heat and dryness of the site make a much better home for a bee than one that is wet and has grass growing all around it and damp and cloudy and whatnot. You have raised beds to the south of the
Yes.
proposed site. Is there any room on the south end of the raised beds?
No.
Okay. If you have that situation, sometimes a 6-foot-high solid picket fence within 4 or 5 feet of the front of the hive, they will fly up to get over that fence, and that will get them up high away from people.
And they come back the same way. Because that's their
I would
reflex
lose my
action.
sun, I would lose the sunlight hitting my hives in the morning if I did that. I
Okay,
put a fence in between the sun and the hive.
right, but if you can put it back maybe 5 or 6 feet and raise the hive up on a high stand, get the bottom 18 inches off the ground, not on the ground.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to tell you about skunks. Keep going.
Okay, we'll keep going. Next question.
Can I just
Yes, Jamie.
about high traffic areas? You want to avoid that if you can, because these, particularly when they're doing honey making at the end of the summer, get very possessive about their little part of your yard. And I have actually had to mow my lawn in my bee suit because
I always do.
the bees thought the back half of my yard was all theirs, and so, and they do have, I also have a water garden on one of my decks, and that's a bee lane. They come and they use the water garden for water, so you don't want to get in the way of that. You don't want to be in their laneway, so to speak. You want to be able to give them that kind of space. So just keep that in mind. If you want to be working down on that raised bed, when they're busy, somebody's going to have to pick a different time, and it's going to be you, because they just come and go, come and go, come and go.
Okay.
Okay?
Skunks. If you're having a problem with skunks, these strips are nailed around the edge of a room that's gonna have a carpet applied. I find them all the time up in our trash box, up in the stump dump. You get a collection of these and nail them the width apart on a board and put it out front of the hive. And then, because you work the back of the hive, you're not bothered by these, but if Mr. or Mrs. Skunk comes along and has to stand up and get on their back feet to get the landing board, they're going to be stepping on these, and they're pretty smart. They won't stay stepping on these for long, they'll leave. They have more intelligence than some humans, but don't cost anything. You find them right in the rubbish, and I just thought I'd share that with you.
You nail them onto a board and you lay the board on the
Right,
ground
they
in front
come
of
with
the hive.
nails in them for nailing around the edge of the room.
And
just
you put it in front of the hive, on
Yeah.
the ground,
Yeah, ground
as
level,
if a welcome mat, so to
Yes.
speak.
whatever you'd like to call it, it works. Question?
Yes, about the skunks, can you not use metal landscaping screen to put in front of your entrance and just leave it there 24/7?
Only if it's electrified.
Yeah.
They'll stand right on it, they'll stand right up, they'll bang the front of your hive, scoop those bees out and eat them. Jane has these in front of her hives because she has a real skunk problem. She traps her skunks. They still come. I have to be very careful when I go there where I step. They are right in front of her hives, and it helps. And keeping your hives up off the ground too, so that when that skunk reaches up, its belly gets exposed, so the bees will come out and sting it. And that's another good deterrent, is when the bee, but if you have it only this far off the ground, well, that's just inviting trouble. Get them up like this, and they'll stay, usually
So you're
once or
saying 2
twice.
feet? About 2 feet?
18 inches to 24, yeah. When they get stung a couple of times, they know they'll have to go find another place to eat. They don't like to be stung any more than most people.
And that's something to consider, to remember, like say you're working a hive and it's really easy to work, and next week all of a sudden it gets cranky with you,
Testy, yeah.
and you think, oh, it's turned aggressive, I've got an aggressive hive. Well, if they've got a skunk that's pestering them,
All night long.
you're just another thing that's bothering them now. So you may not have a bad hive, you've got a hive that's being pestered, or kids throwing pebbles at the hive body, anything like that. So just be mindful that their temperament is sometimes reflective of what they're having to endure.
You check the front of your hive, you'll see scratch marks just above the entrance. If it's a skunk, they have claws, just like cats. Same idea with a cat or a dog, and they scratch like this, and that's what brings the bees out, like what's going on. So just kind of look around and see what you can see if your hive turns edgy for no reason.
Hand in the back there.
Can you guys talk about the vent holes again, if you use them and if you don't use them, and if you do use them, are they just on the deeps?
Are you talking about the auger?
Yes.
Can
Do
I,
any of you not?
can I address that one? I don't use auger holes, I never have. I have a couple of honey supers that have auger holes in it just to make it easier for them to get in and out. But I changed my mind this year. You all know that I mentor Jane, and I have for several years now. And we work together in her hives, and she has auger holes in everything. And I've been watching how the bees do. And I think they do better with the extra ventilation. I'm still on the fence about whether or not I'm gonna cover them for the winter or not. But I think that they're a good thing. I think it gives extra ventilation. And let me tell you, it gets hot in there in the summer. I mean, you can tell when you open up the hive in the middle of July and it's 90 degrees outside, it's hot in there, and they're ventilating and they're fanning their wings and stuff, but it's still quite warm. So anything we can do to help improve that ventilation, I think is a good idea. She also works with all of her bottom boards closed. So I think if you do that to run that hot hive for the mites, I think that helps them even more so with their ventilation. I hope that, okay, good. And yes, I would do it in everything. I would do it in brood boxes and honey supers.
If you get a real hot spell, 95 and up for days on end, take the white plastic or tray or whatever you have out of the bottom of your screen bottom board, and on your telescoping cover,
Yep.
take a small strip of wood like this and put it on the front of your hive on top of the inner cover, so that you can get more circulation right up through the hive and out.
I routinely do that all summer. All of my inner covers have a board like that.
One
Keep it
end,
up.
just one
Well,
end?
actually, I usually put it on either side of the inner cover, but it doesn't make any difference how you do it. It's just that it does help with the ventilation.
Should we do anything with the screen bottom board in the wintertime to help keep them warmer, or should we leave it open for the ventilation?
Okay, I'm gonna repeat that question, I'm gonna address it too. What should you do with a screen bottom board in the winter? Do you leave it open or do you leave it closed? There's two schools of thought on this one. There are folks in this state who leave their bottom boards open without the slide-in debris board all the time. I close mine. I keep mine closed all winter long. And in fact, when you slide it in, you usually face north, the back of your hive faces north, generally speaking. Both Jade and I put a little piece of duct tape across the back because we know that the wind can hit that and make it flip and come out too. So I run mine closed in the winter, but there is a school of thought that says ventilation, ventilation, leave it open. But I think it's kind of personal preference. You might want to go out, Google it online, look in some of the bee forum, there's a bee forum out there, see what other people are doing and kind of decide which management technique you want to try. If you've got two hives, you can leave one in and one out. But I close mine. I don't know, what do you do?
Well, I don't run screen bottom boards anymore, so it's
So
not.
you do solids? So
Solid.
it's like having it closed?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I started with solid bottom boards. We didn't have screen bottom boards when we started. The solid bottom boards are okay, they're really okay, but you really do have to keep them cleaned up. And if you want to monitor for mites, how do you take care of monitoring for mites? Do you put in a piece of paper or something?
No, I don't use a
Right.
screen to measure it, so the assumption is that they're there.
Yeah.
And you'd have to do a roll.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
One of the things you can do with a solid bottom board is you can take a piece of, like the white freezer paper we all used to use years ago to wrap our meat, cut it to fit, a little bit of Pam and stick that in. And I've done that when I didn't have a plastic board because I couldn't find it, it was dirty or whatever, so that you can monitor that way too. So, Peter, what do you do with your screen bottom boards?
I close it, and I don't use a little piece of duct tape. I use a great big piece
Wow.
of duct tape. Because that's like having the drawers, the hatch on your union suit open. You don't want that open back there. You want that buttoned up tight, and that happens before the wrapping goes on it, so.
That's not a pretty sight.
They have enough trouble keeping their overwintering ball up to 94, 95 degrees. And the biggest art to overwintering your bees is limiting the amount of dead air space.
Right.
I used to keep a lot of supers on there with 2 or 3 frames of honey in it. And somebody told me how stupid that was because they were losing all the heat to the empty space around those. It would be better to get rid of all that extra honey. And by the way, if you're talking, now this is a Tony, just came to mind. What's the last flower that the bees, or the last 2 flowers that bees use in the fall to get their honey in? One has already been mentioned, Jamie mentioned.
Goldenrod.
Goldenrod. Goldenrod is a heavy, gritty honey. And one of these sessions, Tony advised if you have to feed your bees honey, feed back the spring light honey and you keep the goldenrod honey.
Right.
Apparently, it's much harder for them to digest the goldenrod honey, and that helps them on their way to get nosema.
Well, it crystallizes faster too. So,
Oh, sure.
well, not only does it crystallize faster when we extract it, but I think it also crystallizes faster in the cappings too. And that may be why in the late fall, as they're bringing in that last of the goldenrod, the last of the asters, that's another late flower too, they process it till it's ripe. They don't always cap it. And the reason they don't cap it is because it's easier to eat in the middle of the winter if it's not capped. And the test for that is you take your frame, even though it may look like it's covered with liquid honey. Ew, looks like what I've been cleaning out all day. Ugh. Anyway, so let's say it's all filled, it's all liquidy. I mean, it's really pretty, you can see it, but it's not capped and it's like October 31st. So you take this frame and you go like this. I'm scared to shake it too much, like this. And if it drips out, you have drips all over the place, it's not ripe, okay? But if you go like this and nothing comes out, that's ripe honey. Where did you get that?
In my stores of show and tell. Jula, you had a question.
Yeah, it's about a water source. I have a brook about 50 to 75 yards away. Do I need to, which won't bother people if the bees go to it? Should I give them water closer, or is that close enough?
I think it's close enough. The people that should be watering are the people in town, like my little 6/10 of an acre lot that's surrounded by houses all around. One day my neighbor came over and said, "Your bees like the pool." And so I started researching that. The chemicals he puts in the pool, the bees like. Yes, so if you've got a pool in the neighborhood, and you're going to put a bird feeder out front of your hive with the floating sponges in it, go see if you can beg a bucket of pool water from him. That might keep them away from his pool. Because that is a management issue that becomes a huge problem with bees. When they start roaming over to the neighbor's pool, and there are always kids around, and the kid's gonna swat a bee, I don't care what you tell them. And then the war is on.
But
And
the
they're
water
hard to
source can be fairly far away even in the winter.
Well, in the
They're not
winter,
going
they're not
away.
flying
yeah, in the winter, their water source is the condensation from their own respiration.
inside the hive, yeah. So yeah, I think you're okay there, I really do.
I have a little brook that skirts the edge of my property, do I have to worry about the bees drowning or?
Some will drown. I don't know if I'd worry about it.
Okay, I just,
Yeah. But if you make a bucket or something like that to water them yourself, you'll notice if you don't have sponges or something floating in it, that you'll end up with a bunch of drowned bees. So it happens, you know.
Yeah, they need something to perch on, so the edge of the brook is perfect for them. They would land on the edge of the brook and walk down to where they can get the water and probably not drown.
Yeah. And part of the problem with, I think, the man-made feeders is they may be sisters in the hive, but out of the hive, they have no respect. And they'll land on each other, they'll knock each other out of the way. And in a natural setting, like a pond or a creek, you're not gonna have 50 or 100 bees trying to occupy the same 4 or 5 inches.
That's true.
So that won't be as common, where if you just have a bowl, they'll all be around the rim, and then more will come and kick them in so that they can have the spot. But that, I don't think, if you have a creek, you won't see that as much.
Again, another good use for the front Boardman feeder that goes in the front of the hive. Okay, I always
It's better as a-
run those all summer.
It's
That way
better
they-
as a waterer than a
Well, yeah,
feeder.
they have their water right at their front door, and I don't have to worry about them going next door to the kiddie pool. And my water source is a lot further away than yours, and I don't want them having to worry where their water is coming from.
Holly had a question.
We talked about skunks and mice, but what about dogs?
What about dogs?
If you've got 3 dogs in your yard, in
Are
your
they black
fenced-in yard.
dogs?
Huh?
Are they black dogs?
Oh, no, no.
Yeah, once they're stung, you don't have to worry about it
So
again.
we don't need to keep them away, they'll.
I will tell you this, bees don't like awful smells, and horse, pig, goat, and dog is like some of their least favorite smells. So I generally tend, when I have a dog, and I do again now, I put my dog in when I'm gonna work my bees. I had one dog that when he saw the white suit, bang, he was at the back door saying, put me in first, because he'd been stung a couple of times. But, yeah, I tend to put my dogs in the house or wherever they are when I'm gonna work bees.
On that animal thing, how about fisher cats? We have a lot of fisher cats.
Hope you don't have chickens.
But you got cats.
I never heard of fishers bothering hives.
Okay.
Have you, Pete?
No, but make sure you have your hives
they're
on,
carnivores.
on a good foundation.
But so are
Right.
bears.
We are planning on that, yeah.
Good.
But I just didn't know. if the
I've
fishers
seen a
bother-
couple people get the large concrete block, the 12-inch wide one, 18 inches long,
Yeah.
and double that up, and they put a hive on top of it, and it's like rocking and rolling. The wind might even knock it off.
Right.
I suggest you do something a lot more sturdy than that, and whatever you make for your hive stand, get it double sized so that when you're working it, my suggestion for the height of your hive stand is the height of your kneecaps.
Right.
Everybody's got different height. And then when you're working it, you can unstack it down on the half that's free, and you don't have to do so much bending.
Right. Yeah, good point.
There were more hands over here. Mo, did you have a question?
I had a question about the water. I have a lot of farm animals that can get kind of gross waterers. Do bees ignore things like poopy duck water, or do they drink out of it?
No, you'll find them drinking anywhere. If you want to have some fun, take some simple syrup, the 1-to-1 mix, and get a plastic tray and put just about a cupful in and put it somewhere near the front of the hive on an angle. If it's just right, you'll have 100 bees lined up drinking at once. It makes this beautiful picture. It's just, they're all busy, head down and drinking. It's a wonderful picture.
So poop or not, they drink it.
Yeah, they tend to find odd water sources attractive, whether it's minerals or what. I won't tell you, but like gutters, they love gutters and all sorts of, they don't necessarily go for the spring.
Mud puddles.
Yeah.
Mud puddles, just like butterflies.
There could be some minerals, salts in that mud water.
Right.
I know if they like swimming pool water, they must have a unique taste.
So that brings up, we have a reverse, if I was gonna feed the
giving them water, we have a reverse osmosis water filtration system, which takes out everything, basically. So should I be adding minerals in, or, I mean, because there was like uranium in it, and it wasn't good stuff, but it's basically like dead water. I
So
mean,
what was in your water that you needed the RO unit for?
radioactivity. Seriously, it was a new well, and it was like uranium, phthalate, like high levels of heavy metals.
Like radon or?
Yeah, yeah. So this reverse osmosis supposedly was gonna take all, it takes everything out. It doesn't just take
It's
the
almost
bad
distilled.
stuff.
Yeah, do you
Right.
have a water source nearby, a natural water source?
I have a pond, but it's not that good of a, like it's leaks and it gets really low in the summer.
Do you have gutters on your house?
No.
Oh.
But you have a rain barrel.
I can
Yeah.
make one.
Yeah, do a rain
That-
barrel.
that's a
or
good
something.
idea.
I think that might
Okay.
work.
Yep, that'll work.
Just collect rain for them.
Right, and then just put it
Okay.
in whatever feeder, whatever
Okay.
affair you want to feed them in.
Okay,
You want rainwater, I'll donate some.
okay.
I run rain barrels. There's a
Jean,
question.
You do comb honey,
I do.
and do you cut your comb or do you get those?
We use the basswood sections.
I'm sorry?
Basswood sections, they're square like this, they're basswood
Yeah?
or linden tree. It's basswood sections. Walter Kelly down in Kentucky is the only one left that sells them.
Well, I've never even seen them. I've seen the round ones.
Yeah, I don't know. The basswood sections are the old-fashioned way to do comb honey. I tell you, there's a lot of people, we have a lot of customers who want it in the old square boxes. I want it the way we used to get it. That's how we, when the bees make it, it's tough to do up here. It was easier in Massachusetts because we had a longer honey flow than we do here. But you really have to be very aggressive to take your strongest hive, and as soon as the honey flow starts, throw that thing right on top of it. If you can take that strong hive and go down into one deep and put it right on top of it, they will work it, they will draw it, they will fill it, and you're done. You only get one chance, first thing in the spring. But it makes about 20 sections, I think.
Oh, wow.
I think it makes 20 squares. Don't quote me on that, my husband makes them up, so I just put them on the hive, I don't know for sure.
I opened up my hive today, and I had a bunch of sugar candy, and I took it out. Should I have left it?
Where did you put it?
Repeat the question,
Or
please.
just, I put it in a
She
cold room?
she checked her hive today and took the sugar candy you had over winter,
Yeah,
and you took it out.
I did.
And I asked her, where'd you put it?
Or I just put it in my bee room.
Okay. Rather than putting it in the bee room and have something happen to it there, I put it on the side of the landing board. And if they're going after it, that will tell you that it was a little bit early to come out of there.
Okay.
But if they aren't eating it, then they have other floral sources they're going to.
Jackie,
Where?
let me ask you a question, excuse me, hold your thought. Did you pull out any frames, like out of the chalk box?
No, I just looked in them.
You just looked in them. Do they still have honey?
Yes.
How much?
Well, I could only see probably around the top of 2 frames.
Okay, I would err on the side of leaving it. It's still only April, guys. It's not very late yet. If it was May and you did that, I would have said, oh yeah, good move. But I would put it back on, first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay.
I would play it safe rather than sorry. I tend to put my sugar candy on at Thanksgiving when I wrap my hives, just because it used to be, and it still will be hard for me to get to my hive because of the drifting at my house, because it's so wide open. So lots of times I can't get to them after a big bad storm, and I have no idea. So I always err on putting it up there. If they need it, they'll eat it. If they don't, they won't.
So I don't have to worry about going to a water-sugar mix right now?
Not unless you want to feed fumagillin.
Okay.
And I'd almost put off the fumagillin for another week, I think, until I know for sure this weather is really settled. Because when you install your packages on Saturday, we're gonna have to be feeding then. So those of you that have overwintered hives like you, Jackie, could wait till next week to start your fumagillin. I just am concerned about stable temperatures right now, too. Yeah, somebody said, hold you.
Well, I was just saying that There's nothing out there, is there,
No.
for the bees to get? It's, I
David,
don't
where-
even see green.
David,
grass.
where's our red maple? No, how close are we? I know Cheryl's is about to pop and so is mine. Skunk cabbage is out.
Cabbage is out.
Skunk cabbage is out.
Pussy willows are out. There's one right opposite the door here.
But, again, that's pollen. Skunk, Cheryl, skunk cabbage is pollen.
Yeah.
Okay, maple is nectar. Pussy willow is pollen. So we don't have much, don't have a lot of nectar sources right now. Your hand was up first.
The other night, we had a real hard frost where I am in Friendship, and I know that some of us will be putting packages in this week.
Yep.
As soon as Sparky gets back. And it's very possible that we could have a hard frost. And I question whether a package can actually provide enough heat to surround the queen and to keep everything safe. Is there a method that works better for installing a package when you have the possibility of a hard frost?
What are you doing Saturday? You coming to my house?
Probably not.
Oh, then you're gonna miss it. Okay.
Well, I've seen some folks actually lay the queen cage on top of the frame and then dump the bees on top of her so that they can
Okay.
make a pile on top of her.
All right, the question is, okay, we're in Maine, we're gonna have hard frost. We had a hard frost the other day. We may have a hard frost coming up this next week. We're gonna install packages on Saturday, because we are. And what are we gonna do? Is that queen gonna survive? Are they gonna stay warm enough? The answer is yes, yes, and yes. Okay. I've done the queen with on top of the frames face down. I prefer to hang her, and when I hang her like that, and then I start to put the package in, I dump the first cup or so of bees right on top of her. And then I finish installing the package, okay? So as I said in the first class, you're not going, in my spring class, you're not gonna put that queen right under the inner cover hole either. You're gonna put, I like to put her just a little bit ahead of it, so that the bees are around her, and they will be around her. Their sugar syrup is right above them. And if you're really worried about the sugar syrup getting cold or something like that, you can, that box you put around your pail feeder, you can put newspaper, it's crunched up newspaper around it just for a little bit of extra. We used to do that in Massachusetts when we installed like the first weekend in April. That's just another way. You don't have to. The bees do not get up into it. They don't seem to mind it because they're so intent on coming up just for the syrup. So I have not. The only time I've ever heard of somebody losing their package because it was cold was because the hive was down on a hollow, and she put the queen over to the side a little bit too far, and they didn't want to leave her to go get the sugar syrup, and they starved. It was really sad.
Now, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
When it gets cold in the house and you go to bed at night, you put another blanket on?
I open the window. Oh, I put another blanket on.
I have been known to suggest to people that I have, from the transfer station, I have this never-ending supply of moving pads that people throw out for some reason. And I am toying with these black plastic heating mats that you put underneath starting seedlings. So if you're close enough to electricity, I don't know why you couldn't slide one of those underneath the bottom board or the whatever and just turn it on and then
come up, yeah.
and then put a wrap over top of it, leave the front open, maybe go out 6 inches to try and trap any escaping heat. But I would do anything to save that $100.
Oh, yeah, it's
Huh.
quite an investment.
Can't you just put a blanket on top of it? If it,
Oh, you could do
you
that.
should have a pretty good warning about a frost. No.
Yeah,
I don't see it
I
as.
mean, that,
I mean,
it's like tomatoes.
some of the dishwashers that come in at the transfer station have this wonderful fiberglass hood over them that have an aluminized cover. And I turn those inside out so the aluminum's on the inside, and I wrap the hive with that in the winter.
In the winter. In the winter, you wrap the hive.
Yeah,
Okay.
but you could do that, like, I'm amazed someone had said, well, I'm just about to get my package and it's gonna rain for 4 days. We had that happen 5 or 6 years ago.
Sure did.
And people were like, what do I do now? Well, you've got the spray bottle with the sugar water in it, And if you can keep them in the cellar where it's a very normal temperature, maybe 60, 70 degrees,
Well, even a little bit cooler is okay too.
and you spray them once or twice a day lightly so that they can feed through the screen. But keep them out of drafts, no drafts. Drafts will kill any animal.
Right, I put a towel over mine because remember, bees like it dark.
And
And
you
that
can-
helps with the heat too.
You can hold them that way as long as you feed them.
And you wanna be sure you spray. Don't read the old books where they used a paintbrush and painted the screen, because they have the little tongues and feet there as you're painting over them. So you wanna be sure you spray.
You get another question.
Yeah, oh,
I was just wondering about if there's any wisdom in using a smaller box, like a big box. I'm kind of fixated on those right now. But, to start a package in.
okay.
That would work, and the closer the volume is to the size of the hive, the easier they're going to have, the easier time they're gonna have to manage both temperature and humidity. And your kicker with doing a package in a nuke is there's actually more bees in a package than the people with nukes are getting.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to be pay very close attention to when they're starting to bust out, because if you miss it by a week, they may leave and say, we have no more room,
That's it.
and all of a sudden you walk out and you have an empty nuke box full of comb because they've given up, because you've given them no option, so they have to go someplace else. But otherwise, yeah, and in fact, there's a beekeeper in Vermont, Mike Palmer, fairly successful, who does overwinter hives in nukes.
Yeah.
As he breaks up, and that's how he grows hives, and so it can be done, certainly.
That's another way to interrupt the Varroa cycle. Split hives and with new queens, and you interrupt the egg laying cycle. And you benefit by that. If you do 2 nukes, you can keep them on top of the old hive and grow them up there. Fascinating, all this new stuff, gotta try it.
Maureen, excuse me a second.
I have it, oh.
Wait, just one second. Maureen, you can also use follower boards in your bigger hive, like what the top bar people use. They also make them for our Langstroth hives. So you could put a follower board in for like 4 or 5 frames and then kind of keep an eye and move it out until they, fill out more. So that's another thought to keep down the size and the volume of what they need to be.
If you use a follower board on one side, would you use balled up newspaper on the other and just watch the entrance, just to see what happens?
Could do that too.
I'd love, that's a great experiment. We have a beekeeper who's not here tonight, Susan. I've got her doing all kinds of different manipulations with wax in her hives already.
Okay, we're gonna start here first. Her hand was up first.
You're fancy. Real basic question, do you lay down cardboard and then mats and then a dark colored thing to put your hives on, to set your hives on, so that you've killed the grass around the hives? And you've got a dark color that will absorb heat, or do you not go to all that trouble?
My hive stands are railroad ties, but right over there, outside that wall, you shoot across the parking lot is Thomaston Grocery, and he was getting rid of his floor mats one day, and I said to John, you want those? He said, no, I'm throwing them out. So they went in the back of the truck. Where's John?
Yeah.
What's in front of my hives?
Yeah, those mats.
And the rain has brought the blue color right back, and they're beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
But you didn't do all the way around?
No, 18-inch wide mulch strips on the backside out of rug from the dump.
Okay, because my concern was listening to Jamie say that she wore her bee suit while she mowed.
Me too.
And I gotta say, that'll kill my bee experiment if my husband has to wear a bee suit while he mows. So I figured if you mulch the, but if you mulch around your hives.
They're yours, you take care of the rest of the lawn. So
I weed whack in front of my hives after I work them. So when I see the grass is getting up, and I don't mind it being a little bit long, but I don't want it over
Right.
the entrance, although that won't hurt anything. But as long as I'm suited up anyway, I just start the weed whacker and I just do a quick weed whack in front of the hive and that's it.
I will say that this past year is the first year I put a veil on while mowing the lawn. The last 4 years,
Yeah.
mowed without one.
My husband doesn't bail up to
And
mow
I
either.
just put it in high gear. and make a really
You feel like a scalded cat, is what
Yeah,
you're saying,
yeah,
right?
and,
Interesting.
and the odd thing is, like I said, until this last summer, I had to give up and put a veil on because one particular hive just didn't like me. Didn't like the mower.
I didn't like the mower, yeah.
But in the past, I'd run right by the hive with it blowing grass clippings right in the entrances.
Oh, yes.
And the bees paid absolutely no attention to me. I was an obstacle that they had to fly around.
Okay. You were probably in a honey flow.
Yeah.
Probably during the honey flow, and they really don't pay as much attention to stuff like that when they're focused on getting the nectar, getting back, getting the nectar, getting back, yeah.
And this past summer, like I said, just one particular hive, and it would be one bee. It's amazing that something that big
Could remember you.
can change how you do things.
Do you time your mowing? Does anybody time your mowing so that it's either early morning or late afternoon, so that you're not at the busy?
Early morning, your grass is gonna be wet.
I'm lucky to get it mowed.
Well, there's that question.
So whenever I can do it is when
So
they-
there's no timing to it or anything like
No.
that?
If you know your queen breeding and wanna change it, what about carniolans? Aren't they kind of mellow?
I think so. Cheryl? Cheryl, you raised carniolans?
I did for 2 years.
They're mellow, aren't they?
That's because they're never home.
Okay, I knew that,
They
but
swarm.
I know they swarm. But are they generally mellow though, aren't they?
Yeah.
But see, I like Italians. I think Italians are pretty mellow.
The other thing about carniolans is they don't build up quickly in the spring. So if you have a nutty spring that is cold and nasty and then a sunny day and the bees
They're
get
not
going,
there. They're not there.
it might be easier to start off with carniolans. Because once summer arrives, they'll go. She'll lay. But that's another option to look at.
Jamie had a comment she wanted to make in that thread of conversation
How about the lawnmower?
about the lawnmowers.
Oh, thank you. I wait till 7, sometimes 8 o'clock at night to finish off in front of the hive, and I have 3-4 courses of tar paper down on the ground. My hives are sitting on the tar paper, and I've got probably this much in front of them to sort of keep the vegetation from growing up in front of them.
What is the span in front of the hive when the bees come back? Is there kind of like a general, this is my entrance?
They
Is it
act-
like 10 feet or?
Actually, watching your hive is really sort of fascinating, because depending on the day and where they're going to get their food, they'll have different routes. So on one day, they may come out straight and just head straight up and off they go. Sometimes they come in from the side, so it really depends on the day. Their route is different. If they're going to get the water, then, they're going this way, and if they're headed over to Peter's house, and they're, going that way. So it depends on the day and where the food source is. They don't have, they don't come and go in a regular fashion.
But when they do come and go, they're coming right out of the entrance.
Right.
So your entrance is about like this. So pretty much they're coming and going in that configuration. I still recommend that you get your lawn chair. Once you get them all installed, you go down and sit next to it, not in front of it, but next to it, and watch your bees. Watch what pollen loads they're bringing in on their pollen baskets, and watch them come and go. And you'll see some bees will come out and, like Jamie said, go straight up, and some will come out and go up and go backwards over your hive, because all my fields are behind our hives. So that's kind of fun to see. And they come back the same way they left. So that's why if you need a fence in front of your hive, they'll come out and go up over the fence, but then they'll come back over the fence and come back down. So they use that same configuration. Your hand must be getting tired.
Well, I was just gonna comment on the lawn mowing business. My hive last year was on the edge of the lawn, and their flight path in was over the top of a pine tree and then down to the hive. And the first day, that I set out to mow after that I had installed them, they had already started finding stuff, and I could see they had an established flight path, and they would come in over the top of this pine tree, and then, so I mowed everything else in the lawn except for that, and then I'm sitting there, I could see the sun it was late in the afternoon, and I could see this stream of bees coming and going, and I'm wondering, do I mow in front of that hive? I thought, well, they look like they know what they're doing. I'm sure they can miss me, so I'm just gonna try. And I mowed the rest of that summer and not one bee ever touched me. And there were times when there were so many of them coming in, and they were coming in hot and heavy. I'd sit there and watch them. They'd actually crash land on the landing. I mean, there would be bees coming out of the hive and bees coming in so heavily loaded they'd hit and then roll up into the...
Yeah,
And,
they're just about making it on what their
yeah.
reserves are too, as far as like what they have in their belly.
Yet I never got hit by a bee, and I never got stung. So it may be just that particular hive. I don't know. I don't have that hive anymore.
I'm gonna rabbit trail for a second here. Years ago, Dick and I drove up to the top of Clary Hill in Union because I wanted to do some slides of the bees on the blueberries because I didn't have any blueberry slides. And we got up to the top of that hill, and there must have been 50 hives in a row, and there were bees literally everywhere. And I said, oh, now how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna get out of the truck and get close enough to the plant to do a picture or two? And Dick said, try it, because I don't think they're gonna bother you. I said, yeah, but you're not the one getting out. But I did. I opened the truck door very carefully, and when I opened the truck door, the bees that were flying went right up and over it. I thought, okay. So I stepped out, and they just went around me. And the noise was incredible, the hum, but they just went around me. They never hit me, they didn't bounce into me or anything. I must have made maybe 25 or 30 pictures. Never bothered me at all. So when they're in a honey flow or a nectar flow, they're pretty focused on what they're doing, and they'll just go around obstacles. That's a good observation. I saw a hand out of the corner. Cheryl.
I planted an herb garden around the front of my hives, about 4 feet out, and the sides. But then the hive beetle came last year. So now I'm curious if that hive beetle was able to go into my nice herb garden and winter over. So I can let you all know if I end up with hive beetles coming up out of the ground.
Hopefully it was cold enough last winter.
Yeah, but when it was really cold, we had that deep snow. So,
Ticks are out.
Well, I know ticks are out, but
They
hive
never- they
beetle
never
has to
rain.
overwinter and pupate and stuff down there.
In the ground, doesn't
In the
it?
ground, so I'm gonna,
Nope.
they don't go deep either, so I think probably our winter will kill them, the frost will kill them. We're hoping that's the case up here, is that hive beetle will not survive very well up here on our colder winters like we had this winter, because it's just too cold.
And I think, too, the type of soil they like is not as common up here.
That's true.
And our heavy clay soils aren't what they favor.
Gee, too bad they can't get through it, huh?
So we have some things going for us in terms of them not becoming a huge problem, but we obviously have to deal with them now to some degree, especially as we get packages and nukes from Georgia.
So they're an import.
We're transporting them.
Well, they were an import, hive beetle was an import to the United States, as was Varroa mite, as
Yeah.
was tracheomite, they're all imported in. So, that's,
As were the bees.
well, the bees, yeah, originally the bees too. What, do we got one more question time?
Yeah, it's
Paula?
8:30, we probably have one more, if there's one more question.
Well, I did see a hand over here first, did somebody?
Japanese beetles, I get a lot of raspberries, and the Japanese beetles like them a lot. Are they gonna bother the hives?
No, hives aren't usually bothered by Japanese beetles. In the fall, hornets and yellow jackets are trying to get that last bit of whatever they can get in the fall, so you find them in the hives a little bit, but I've never seen Japanese beetles bother hives. Yes.
I just want to thank you all for this, this class. It has been marvelous.
I'll speak for myself, it's been great.
guys
This
are great.
class has been
Yeah.
a cut above others that we've been to. The questions have been marvelous. And I can't wait to see what happens this summer.
So stay in touch. Let us know how you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.